Oh, a nice cloudy, cool reprieve. And I am on the Orbea Occam LT. Thing is a sweet, kind of in-between size trail bike. 160 millimeters of travel up front, 150 in the rear. Made for being able to pedal around efficiently, but ride harder terrain. Yeah, and I've found this bike to be a pretty darn good climber. Gives you a lot of rear end support while pedaling. It has like a pretty more lively, stiff feeling rear suspension. And certainly when you put power through the cranks, feels like the rear end is nice and supported. And then when you pair that with a 440 millimeter chainstay and a 77-degree seat-tube angle, you're in a very forward, balanced climb position. But this bike also kind of backs it up with having a little bit more in the way of anti-squat. When you pedal, get tension on the chain, that rear end has a little bit of support to kind of keep the rear end from squatting down on steep climbs where you're powering hard, like right here. Feels super balanced on steep, tough climbs. Yeah, I'd say almost like the theme of this bike, both uphill and downhill, is front to back stability, pretty slacked out, new age geometry, and a more like poppy, lively, stiff feeling rear suspension. Yeah, I find myself really loving the seated position of this bike. Feels like it's a really good green light for being a bike that can get you up really steep, gnarly climbs that you need that new age geometry to make easier. Almost like you're sitting on the edge of your saddle, but the bike kind of does it for you, which I really love. Yeah, it feels super in control. I can like do a wheelie out of that switchback. You know, like immediately when I got on this bike, it just feels like a very kind of middle of the road geometry, which is a really good thing. You just feel stable and intuitive and less like, oh, I need to learn a new platform, and more like, oh, this bike feels like a broken in glove that I can just slip my hand right into. You can just like hop on this bike as a first time and kind of shred. Yeah, the way this bike takes the power and puts it down just feels really nice and intuitive. Definitely a bike I could ride all day for many miles. Really excited to see how this thing rips downhill today. Okay, we made it to the top of the mountain efficiently. Pretty breezy on this bike. Cooler temps help too. Man, I love this weather. I'm so stoked on this cloudy, cooler day. Yeah, this bike definitely has like a longer wheelbase presence. Oh wow, we got some good dirt up here. This is gonna be incredible. And that really caters to a trail like this, where you're pretty wide open and bumpy, faster speeds. Kind of calms things down front to back. You don't have to like change your weight distribution on the bike as often. That 440 chainstay just kind of calms things down. You got a nice 480 reach up front. I really like the kind of capability feeling of this 150, 160 millimeter package of this bike. And that Fox 36 feels like a good amount of fork still, honestly. Feels like quite capable on that front end. Still can pull the front end up. Feels fairly doable with this bike. I got the bars in like the highest position. But yeah, this bike certainly has like a little bit of a playful quality to it. I feel like it really straddles that line between being playful and being that kind of like longer, more calm down bike. Like I feel like this is a little bit more of like a lean it over kind of bike versus like a slash drop it around corner, just with that 64 head angle and 440 reach or 440 chainstay. Man, it just feels like a match made in heaven for chucking nut. One of the things I really noticed about this bike is it's a more stiff feeling frame, which gives you a sense of precision. It's a little bit more trail feedback, a little bit more, you know, through the bars, but you also feel like there's a reduced sense of the bike flexing around. Took an interesting line around that corner, but worked out. This bike's staying planted today. Yeah, so this bike's a little bit more on the, you know, giving you trail feedback side of things. And I think that comes back to like the really nice pedaling kinematics that this bike has. Feels really good off of jumps. It's got a pretty progressive rear end. Certainly not feeling the bike bottoming. I added a little bit of pressure since I was running so much sag before, but even in that really sagged out position or setup, the bike still wasn't like having perceptible bottom outs. Yeah, it feels really stable through that section there. There's a lot of loose rock on that section right now, and you feel like you come into that section with some good speed. I think just like the wheelbase of this bike, 64-degree head tube angle, just kind of calms things down a little bit. So I appreciate that. Phew, these trees are getting tighter and tighter every year. Oh, it handled that really loose corner well. Felt like I could kind of confidently like throw my weight forward. Oh man, yeah, this bike feels so good on this double down trail in the Chuckanuts. Phew. So the Occam LT definitely likes speed. So it's definitely one of those more capable, kind of do it all mountainy kind of bikes. It's one of my favorite categories to review because it kind of caters to my style. The Occam is definitely feeling more like one of those rider's bikes that you can handle the feedback. You're searching for smoother lines and you appreciate something to kind of push into. Woo! It's like it gives you that peppy, lively quality, but it's a little bit less of a just gonna send it and let the bike eat it bike. Like I'm definitely getting more trail feedback through the bars, but not in a way that's like beating me up. It's just gives you that slightly smaller bike ride quality where you're, you know, a little bit more looking for cleaner lines. Yeah, so you get that little bit stiffer, more search for clean line kind of bike. But then you also have this longer wheelbase where it's like higher speeds don't feel, they feel very welcome on a bike like this. You're like, sure, I'll open it up, I'll get off the brakes. That rear shock tune feels very open and fast rebound, which is usually one of my favorite types of shock setup. I do think this bike is feeling like it would just be an incredible candidate for a rear coil shock, just since it's nice and progressive. I'd just be interesting to see how that would change the flavor of this thing. Code stealth brakes are quite powerful. 180 millimeter rotor spec on the rear. You know, guy my size, I wouldn't mind to see like a 200 if I was riding steeper trails. It's plenty for this double down, double black trail. Whew. Oh yeah, you get a lot of return when you push into that rear shock. That nice progressive linkage. Makes this bike feel playful. Feels kind of racy. Feels like, you know, somebody who likes a stiffer, more responsive bike is gonna love this. Just feels like kind of urgent and racy. Has that long wheelbase to just keep things sorted, cool you down a little bit when you're over your head. I do think for me, this like 440 chainstay feels a lot more at home on these faster trails. And when it starts to get like a little bit tighter and you know, you wanna maneuver the bike a little bit more, I wouldn't mind a shorter chainstay. But it's a great, I think most riders are gonna appreciate that longer wheelbase just to inspire confidence at speed and give you that little bit of fore-aft stability. Yeah, this bike is just feeling great today. What an enjoyable way to spend this cloudy day. Great visibility, cool temps. I don't think there's any bike I'd rather be on right now. This is great. Occam's giving me that slight sense of like urgency, wanting me to push for speed a little bit more. You know, slightly stiffer bike will do that. You know, it gives you that return as you push into the bike and you're looking for grip and pushing it into holes. You get that power return out of the bike. I guess that's probably what feels so racy. So who is this bike for? Final thoughts. This bike is just an incredible all-arounder for that rider that wants to do long rides. They love to pedal. They need an efficient bike. And they also like to send steep, unforgiving terrain. You know, it's just one of those all-mountain bikes that can kind of handle it all. They like a little bit more stiffness to get that pump return out. So if you enjoyed the review, consider subscribing to the YouTube channel. For the full write-up, head over to freehub.com. Oh man, what a treat.